You checked your bank account last Thursday. Not because you were worried, just routine. 2 weeks of transactions, nothing dramatic. And somewhere in the middle of the scroll, you counted 9 separate charges that all came from the same reasoning. It made sense at the time. Grocery delivery on a Tuesday morning because you didn't have time before work. Same-day shipping on something you needed by Thursday. Food delivery on a Wednesday night because you'd worked late and cooking felt like one step too many. A premium subscription tier on an app you use twice a week. An express service fee on a retail order you could have picked up yourself. Each one was a real choice. Each one was rational. What you were looking at wasn't 9 decisions. It was a mechanism. And the fact that it showed up looking like 9 independent choices is exactly how the mechanism works. By the end of this, you will understand what that total actually is, why it grows the way it does, and why the choices felt free even as the structure was being built around you. The case for convenient spending is not a rationalization. It is an economic argument, and it holds up under basic scrutiny. Time has a cost. If your hourly earning rate is meaningful, and for most people who use premium convenience services regularly, it is then paying $12 to have groceries delivered, rather than spending an hour in a store, is a form of rational arbitrage. You are converting time into money, then deploying that money to recover the time. The logic is internally consistent. This is how the convenience economy presents itself, not as luxury, as efficiency, as the intelligent deployment of financial resources to preserve your most constrained asset, and the adoption data doesn't look like irrational behavior. Data from early 2024 shows that approximately 70% of U.S. consumers had ordered food delivery in the past month. The National Restaurant Association reports that nearly 75% of restaurant orders are now consumed away from the restaurant, a major shift from before the pandemic, with off-premises traffic at full-service restaurants rising from 19% in 2019 to 30% in 2024. These aren't the spending habits of people being impulsive. These are the spending habits of a population that has integrated a service into the structure of daily life. The conventional framing of convenience spending is that it's controllable. You use it when you need it, pull back when you don't. The cost is variable, responsive to your choices, never structural. You are the operator of the spending, not the subject of it. That framing was accurate at the beginning. The error is in assuming it stays accurate over time. Here is a number from a 2023 survey of 2,100 American respondents. The average American who uses food delivery services spends $1,566 annually, with each order costing roughly $35, and orders placed approximately 3.7 times per month, meaning delivery consumes about 3.7% of annual income for users of these platforms. That's one line item. The broader convenience budget, same-day shipping, grocery delivery, premium subscription add-ons, express service fees sits above it. There is a second number that is more clarifying. Americans estimate they spend $86 per month on subscriptions. Their actual spending, measured through account data, averages $219 per month, a 2.5 times perception gap between what people believe they're paying and what they're actually paying. This gap is not explained by carelessness. It is explained by architecture. Convenience services and subscription products are specifically designed so that individual transactions feel smaller than their aggregate. The grocery delivery charge is bundled inside the grocery total. The annual subscription fee arrives once and is mentally amortized into something negligible. The service fee on each food order is presented after the decision to order has already been made. The math is technically available. The structure of the presentation makes it functionally invisible. There is a word in product design for what creates that invisibility. The word is friction, or more precisely, the deliberate, systematic, and financially motivated removal of it. The mechanism is called friction removal monetization. Friction, in the language of behavioral economics and product design, refers to any resistance that exists between a desire and a purchase. The 10-minute drive to the store, the 3-day shipping window, the requirement to plan a meal before you need it, the effort of cooking when you're tired. Each friction point is also, simultaneously, an exit point, a moment where you might have decided, not now, not necessary, I'll wait. Convenience services were not built to make your life easier. That is the output, not the design objective. They were built to remove exit points. This design principle has a documented intellectual lineage. Research by behavioral economists Richard Thaler and Shlomo Benartzi established that default structures and friction reduction have outsized effects on behavior, often exceeding the effect of financial incentives in magnitude. B.J. Fogg's behavior design framework, widely adopted in consumer technology over the past 2 decades, identified friction reduction as the primary lever in habit formation. The core finding across this body of research affirmed repeatedly: every step removed from a desired behavior significantly increases the probability that behavior occurs often more effectively than information or incentives alone. The food delivery platforms operationalize this directly and deliberately. Amazon's one-click purchase removed payment friction and dramatically increased impulse purchases. The food delivery apps extended that logic across the entire decision sequence. The interface is not designed to help you decide whether to order. It is designed to compress the time between the desire to order and the act of ordering. Saved payment information eliminates the pause of entering a card. Past order recall eliminates the friction of choosing a meal. Push notifications arrive at the moment of peak susceptibility, early evening, between work and whatever comes after, when decision fatigue is highest and the alternative of cooking feels furthest away. The sequence from impulse to completed transaction has been reduced across the major platforms to approximately 2 taps. Here is where the mechanism turns structural. As online platforms reduce friction in the purchasing process, they significantly shorten the time between having desire for a product and the actual purchase. The once more deliberate process of searching, navigating, and entering payment information is phased out, reducing the psychological cost of spending by weakening what researchers call the pain of paying. But there is a second effect that operates beneath the transactional level. When you remove friction from the same behavior repeatedly, your tolerance for the friction in the alternative shifts. The cooking option doesn't become objectively harder, it starts to feel harder. The gap between ordering and not ordering, which was previously small, becomes perceptually wide without the objective difficulty having changed. This is friction recalibration. Repeated exposure to frictionless options raises the subjective cost of alternatives even when the actual cost is unchanged. This is the core of the mechanism. Not that convenience spending is high, but that over time, the alternatives become psychologically more expensive than they objectively are. The exit point, the moment where you might have said not now, has been engineered away, and it does not grow back on its own. One-click purchase buttons, saved payment methods, auto-filled addresses, and algorithmically generated recommendations all simplify the purchasing process and lower the cognitive burden associated with decision-making, and designs customized to user behavior significantly boost conversion rates while supporting impulsive behavior as a norm in digital commerce. This is not a side effect, it is the product. ACR Journal Now. Who profits from this? The answer has more layers than the delivery fee makes visible. DoorDash offers 3 partnership tiers to restaurants at 15%, 25%, or 30% commission on delivery orders. Restaurants respond, as standard practice, by raising menu prices on delivery platforms to offset that commission. Many restaurants list higher prices on delivery platforms to offset fees. Typically, food delivery services charge restaurants between 15% and 30%, which is why many restaurants choose to increase their prices by a similar margin on those platforms. The result, a $10 item at the restaurant counter might appear at $13 on the delivery app before any platform fees reach you. DoorDash then charges the consumer a 15% service fee on top of that adjusted subtotal, meaning a $10 item in store can app before the delivery fee and tip are added. A meal that costs a household $4.63 to prepare at home costs roughly $13 as takeout and close to $24 all in on delivery. The convenience premium is not a single margin. It is a stacked extraction across multiple parties, most of which are not visible from the consumer's position. The deeper profit, however, is not per transaction. It is per recalibration, because once a user's friction tolerance has shifted once the delivery option feels normal, and the alternative feels effortful, the platform does not need to reacquire the behavior. It persists. The spending recurs not because the consumer consciously re-enrolls each time, but because the decision architecture has been reorganized so that the default behavior is to spend. That recalibration is the product. Every transaction is incidental to it. Marcus is 38. He works as a data engineer at a consulting firm. His combined household income with his partner is $142,000 per year. After taxes and contributions, their take-home is approximately $8,200 per month. Fixed costs, rent, utilities, insurance, transportation total $5,100. Discretionary margin, $100. Marcus's named emotional state is earned exhaustion. He works between 50 and 55 hours per week reliably. He doesn't experience this as a grievance, it's the nature of his role, and he's compensated reasonably for it. But it has produced a consistent logic. The hours he doesn't get back deserve to be offset by not having to think hard about dinner or logistics. Convenience is, in his framing, a form of deferred compensation. In January 2020, Marcus says he's spending food delivery, same-day shipping, grocery delivery, premium subscription add-ons, totals $195 per month. He would describe this as occasional. James is 40. Similar role, similar city. Combined take-home, $8,000 per month. Fixed costs, $4,900. Discretionary margin, nearly identical profile. James's named emotional state is deliberate detachment, same hours as Marcus, same kind of exhaustion. One structural difference: in early 2020, James made one decision about convenience spending, not a budget cap, not a restriction, a gate. Before ordering food delivery or paying for expedited anything, he would check one condition. Does he actually need this within the next 24 hours? If not, it went on a list of day. He didn't eliminate the option. He reintroduced a friction point. January 20, James's convenience spending is $90 per month. By January 2022, Marcus's convenience spending has moved to $380 per month. The pandemic normalized delivery at every level. What was occasional in 2019 became routine through 2020, and the recalibration held through 2021. A second streaming subscription tier was added during a promotional trial and never canceled. Grocery delivery expanded from occasional to twice weekly. None of these felt like expansions at the time. Each felt like an extension of a behavior already in place. That's the mechanism confirming itself. James's January 2022 convenience spending, $105 per month. By January 2025, 5 years in, Marcus is spending $430 per month. The number has stabilized there, but that stabilization is not restraint. It is the equilibrium point of a recalibrated baseline. Marcus doesn't experience $430 as high convenience spending. He experiences it as normal. The exit from that normal cooking consistently, shopping in person, waiting for standard shipping would require effort that now registers as qualitatively different from before. The alternatives haven't changed. His perception of them has. James's January 2025 spending, $115 per month. The gap between them is $315 per month. Over 5 years, that is $18,900 without accounting for any return. If that delta had been invested into an index fund at historical average returns, its value at year 5 would approximate $24,000. Neither made any decision that would be identified as financially irresponsible. Marcus is not in debt. James is not deprived. The divergence in their financial positions is not the product of discipline versus indulgence. It is the product of one structural choice made in January 2020. James maintained a friction point that the convenience economy was specifically designed to remove. Marcus, confronted with this arithmetic, doesn't feel cheated. He feels something more unsettling. That the baseline he calls normal was manufactured, and that the cost of manufacturing it was paid over 5 years in increments too small to register individually until the total appears in a single line. The scenario does not resolve. The recalibration is genuine. The alternatives feel as hard as they feel, not as hard as they objectively are. That distinction is not immediately actionable. It is simply the accurate description of what has happened. Scale this across a consumer population, and the arithmetic becomes the foundation of a market. The online food delivery market in the United States was valued at approximately $353 billion in 2024, with the meal delivery segment accounting for roughly $95 billion. The global market is projected to expand at a 10.3% compound annual growth rate, reaching $505 billion by 2030. DoorDash alone processed 2.5 billion U.S. orders in 2024, generating $80.1 billion in gross order value and $10.7 billion in revenue. The subscription economy adjacent to this formalized recurring charges across digital and physical convenience categories tells a parallel story. The global subscription economy reached $492 billion in 2024. Subscription-based businesses have grown 435% over the past decade, far outpacing traditional retail expansion. That growth is not explained by population increases or income growth. Subscription models generate 3 to 5 times more revenue per customer over their lifetime compared to transactional buyers, and 70% of subscription revenue comes from existing customers rather than new acquisition. The product is retention. The mechanism of friction-reduced renewal and recalibrated baseline expectations is what drives it. There is a second-order effect that does not appear in those market figures. When convenience becomes structural for a consumer segment, not a choice but a baseline, it changes the competitive landscape for the alternatives. Physical grocery stores cannot easily compete with same-day delivery on friction. Their response, observable across the past decade, has been to narrow staffing, reduce checkout optionality, and simultaneously acquire or build delivery infrastructure of their own. The frictionless option becomes marginally easier over time. The traditional option stays flat or becomes marginally harder. The recalibration isn't happening only at the individual level, it is being managed at the infrastructure level. To make this concrete, in a metropolitan area of 2 million households, if the average household is paying $180 per month in convenience premiums above what equivalent goods would cost at base accounting for delivery markups, service fees, and platforms charges, that is $360 million extracted from consumer spending in that metro every month. Annually, $4.3 billion. This number represents a structural transfer from consumer discretionary spending into platform and logistics infrastructure, occurring in amounts small enough per transaction that no individual charge registers as significant. The invisibility is the design. The convenience economy profits not just from each transaction it facilitates. It profits from each degree by which it shifts the baseline of what feels normal, and therefore what feels necessary. Here is what convenience actually is at the mechanism level. Not a tool you use when you need it, not a luxury you deploy selectively. Convenience, at the scale it operates and with the design principles it employs, is a behavioral subscription model that installs itself through repeated use rather than through a single enrollment decision. A traditional subscription requires one active moment. You sign up, you pay, you retain the ability to cancel. The convenience economy requires hundreds of micro-decisions, each appearing to be a standalone choice, none of which registers as a subscription enrollment, but which produce, in aggregate, a recurring and semi-fixed cost that persists because the alternative has been engineered to feel harder than it actually is. The framing you were given that convenience spending is personal, controllable, a reflection of your values around time is not wrong. It is temporally incomplete. It is accurate at the moment of first use. It becomes progressively less accurate with each subsequent use, as friction tolerance shifts and the baseline recalibrates. By the time the spending has become structural, the original framing still technically applies. You are choosing each time, but the context of that choice has been quietly reorganized around you. You didn't decide that cooking was hard. The cooking option was placed in continuous comparison with a progressively frictionless alternative until it came to feel that way. You didn't decide that waiting 3 days for standard shipping was unacceptable. Standard shipping was placed alongside a same-day option until the delay became perceptually longer than it objectively is. The question that usually follows a mechanism analysis like this is, how do I spend less on convenience? That's a frugality question. It responds to the symptom, not the structure. The actual question is more precise. At what point did your convenience spending shift from variable to structural? Because those are different financial conditions, and most people have not located that boundary in their own spending. The paradox at the center of this mechanism is not that convenience is expensive. It's that convenience is designed to make you experience its cost as the cost of normal life, rather than as a premium you're paying above it. The monthly total on your bank statement is not the cost of your life. It includes a fee you were gradually enrolled in for the removal of the moments where you might have opted out. Once you can locate that line not conceptually, but in the actual numbers, the mechanism stops running invisibly. It doesn't stop. It just stops being invisible. And that is a different financial position than the one you were in before you could see it. The most efficient version of your life is not free. It was priced in increments you were never asked to approve. Every friction that was removed was also a gate that closed behind you. The cost of removing it wasn't charged at removal. It compounded into a baseline that now feels like yours because it is yours, assembled from hundreds of rational choices made inside an architecture that was designed to produce exactly this result. You didn't spend your way here, you were recalibrated here. That's worth knowing. It changes what the number on your bank statement is actually measuring. Think about one convenience you use regularly. If it disappeared tomorrow, no app, no service, would you replace it with something else, or would you discover you never needed it in the first place? Convenience costs compound below awareness. But once you see the mechanism, you start noticing it in places that have nothing to do with money.